Hello, everyone. So today I'm joined with Ashley once again. Welcome back to the channel, Ashley.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. And today we're going to talk about destiny. Now, my own ideas of destiny are kind of middle of the road. I believe that destiny does exist, but I don't think of it in the same way other people do. I think of destiny as whatever you end up choosing, that's basically what's always meant to happen. Now, that doesn't mean that something gives you your destiny per se. It just means that if somebody knew all the factors that make you you, they could calculate your destiny technically, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. So, for instance, if somebody knew every single decision that I've made to this point mentally, and they knew my brain chemistry, they might be able to say, okay, well, he's going to smoke a cigarette tomorrow, or he's not going to smoke a cigarette tomorrow. It completely depends on if somebody completely knows your ins and outs, but that's basically impossible. It's virtually impossible. So someone could say that I don't believe in destiny in that way, but I do believe in a sense that we're always going to make certain decisions. We just have somebody who's predicting it just has to have all the factors and has to know your brain chemistry and every gray matter square millimeter in your brain. Ashley, my question for you is, have you felt that you have a certain destiny, or do you feel like it is beyond that? Do you think that you make your own destiny, or what would you like to say on the matter?
I believe that people create their own destiny. I do think that we can have soul urges. So our soul is urged into a certain direction, and then it feels like we are destined to do something because that soul urge is so strong within us. I also think we have predispositions that we're born with that make us, maybe from an astrological standpoint or from like a numerological standpoint, we might be a little bit more like have a predisposition for things. Just like with DNA, we might have predispositions towards alcoholism or drug addiction or whatever. But we do create our own destiny. I think it's that soul urge that is what people are connecting to when they feel that they're destined to do something. Like I feel like I'm destined to be an artist and a singer and a shamanist. And I think that's just part of my soul urge, you know. Like I don't think it's actually destiny. I think it's a soul urge that feels.
Okay, so you don't believe in specific destiny, like you're definitely going to do this or that. You believe that there's these soul urges that kind of bring you to.
I think it's a choice still. I think it's a choice. I can go against my soul urge, and it would feel like emotionally I'm going against my destiny, but really I'm just going against the soul urge.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I do like that term soul urge. I haven't heard that before. I think that my own soul urge has been to try to connect as many people as possible and spread information as much as possible. Even if it's information that I don't agree with, I'd like for everybody to connect as much as possible. And but when it comes to me, there are certain visions that I feel like I've been given. I of course could be completely crazy or just hyper creative, and then I imagine that they're visions. But there are certain things that I've seen that were kind of placed in my head, I guess you could say. You can say it by the gods, by my own soul, which is, it's transmaterial. It doesn't have to do with time. It doesn't have to do with space. It always knows what it's going to be and where it's going. So in a way, I think that our own soul has the best chance of predicting our own destiny or forcing us towards our own destiny. But there are certain things that I think that soul urge, as you coined, or maybe you heard somewhere else, has guided me towards. For instance, voidism. Most people watching this, even people who've been watching me for a while, might not have seen any of my voidist videos. But I have written a book. It's a book of philosophy that doesn't have to do with having a certain spiritual identity, doesn't have to do with spirituality at all if you don't want it to. But it's a philosophical code that I was kind of prodded by, I guess you could say, the soul urge to write. And bringing it to fruition also feels like a part of my destiny. So, when you're talking about soul urge, is there any pictures that your soul gives you in a sense, or is it a general drawing to a certain area of life?
Well, I think it can be whatever a person's consciousness is drawn towards. So some people see things in more of a visual sense. Other people have recurring verbalizations or, words that pop into their head. For me, I get more visuals. So I'll have visuals of being on a stage, or I'll have visuals of this is what I'm going to be in 10 years or 20 years or whatever. And I had that even as a child. Like I've had more of the visions. I think the soul urge is just, whether it shows up in visions or ideas or whatever it is, it's just that like predisposition towards what you want to create for your destiny.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm going to take it to a different route than I originally intended, because I'd like to talk about what some people might call guardian angels, or beings that are with you to kind of prod you in the right direction. For me, as some people know, is Arclight, and I've described what Arclight looks to you and a couple other people, but he's been with me for a long time. He's been kind of my guardian angel since I was, just getting into high school, maybe at the end of middle school, and I'm 27 now. But it feels like he only gives me bits and pieces of what is going to happen and what I need to do. It always feels like he's watching and ready to give advice in the moment, but the overall arc of who I'm supposed to be, I feel like he knows, but because he's kind of a part of myself at the same time, but he doesn't give it all at the same time. So, do you have any kind of being that's associated with your consciousness that kind of draws you in a certain direction, gives you advice? And do you think that they know your ultimate soul's destiny? I guess you can say. That's kind of a loaded question, but go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely have higher beings, like higher parts. I call it higher parts of myself because I believe in unity consciousness, and I think that everyone is all one. I think we're all one. So therefore, my consciousness is all one, even if it's like fragmented. Yes, I have higher aspects to my consciousness that I check in with, and I kind of envision them as angels. I also have some lower level beings that I interact with that are in my consciousness. And usually with those beings, I know to do the opposite of whatever they're suggesting. So,
yeah, it's kind of like the old Freudian, super ego, id, and ego. We're kind of like the ego, the id is like, the id is like the lower, that we know not to follow our base instincts, our bottom chakra pull,
yeah.
if you will. And then the superego is that kind of mental superhero that's a part of us that always knows what's right, always knows what we should do, and to the best of our abilities, we should follow that. So
I have an aspect of myself that's more like Wonder Woman type of person. Like there's an actual aspect of myself that thinks I can take on everything, and it appears almost like Wonder Woman in my psyche. So.
Yeah, I feel that's pretty appropriate. Just as a side note, it's pretty funny the avatars our higher self takes up. I call Arclight my guardian angel. I don't think of him as a superego necessarily. I think of him kind of as a guardian angel, even though I'm Hindu and there's not a huge guardian angel thing in Hinduism. But I feel like a lot of the time, how we see that part of ourselves or that being that's guiding us really says a lot about who we are and a lot about what we can be. We might be given visions of what's going to happen or what we need to do. We can go against those if we choose, but it always feels like there's a part of ourselves that knows what's going to happen. And this is how people do readings, tarot readings, rune readings, or what have you. There's always that part of ourselves that is so alien, yet because it's so above ourselves, but it's alien in a way that is just beyond time. Like our soul itself, it's just this material that is not bound by the actions that we do right now. It just always is, and getting in touch with that ultimate is what I think that we have to do. So when I'm reading runes, I might read, I might pull out Fehu, and that's kind of your possessions as a spiritual being, yourself as a spiritual being, what you have as a person, and what you always carry with you. I might draw Ansos, which is calling upon the gods, your higher self. But these two runes, or Uruz, or Lagus, or Isa, whatever runes you draw, for instance, they're all different gateways within who you are as a person. And these gateways, I believe, lead to grander realizations of yourself. It's like every single one of these runes is a section of what you can be. And if you once you grab onto that when you're doing a reading, you're actually helping somebody through a piece of your higher self. And if you can kind of picture or realize all these runes at once, it's like you're getting the whole soul experience. Because there's a reason the runes are called the gods of the gods. It's because they are beyond personhood. They are the primordial reality that is just one step beyond the spirit, beyond creation, if you will. That's my addition. Do you feel a similar thing when you're doing tarot or runes? Do you feel like they're a piece of yourself and a gateway to something like that?
When I'm doing tarot or runes, or oracle cards or any of the different things that I use, I can divine even with like a deck of cards, just a regular deck of cards, because I break everything down into colors and numbers, because I think at the very core, everything can be broken down into a color or a number. And so there are certain attributes and certain qualities of each color and number. And so like with runes, it's the same thing. There's, 8, there's 3 sets of 8. And, so yeah, I feel like I'm tapping into those primordial essences. And also I feel like I'm tapping into a grid of reality when I'm doing a reading. So like, I think underneath all of this, everything's a vibrational grid.
Well, like the fabric of reality. That's kind of how I picture the runes as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's that's why I honestly recommend that people think of runes or tarot cards or however you use divination as more than just telling the future, what somebody needs to hear as far as advice. It's really tapping into that part of ourselves which is beyond any given circumstance, beyond any given situation. And that's why it's so easy to tell what a situation is like and what advice needs to be given, because we're tapping into something that's beyond that.
Along the lines of what we're talking about with destiny, when I do a tarot reading, like I did an over the phone reading, and that person's anonymous, so I can mention it a little bit, but I did a reading tonight for somebody, a distance reading, and I don't tell them what the future is going to be, because I tell them that I told this person, like, everything is a choice. Where I can show you is where the flow is going. The flow is going to be this in the near future, just because of where the energy is vibrating right now. So because we still create our destiny.
Yeah. And it's I don't know if I agree with you as much on that. The only reason I say that I don't necessarily and we can have our different opinions, is because I think that time is a human construct, and it's something that's very binding to how we understand things and think. We can't see what's going to happen because we're so bound in the idea of individuality, not being a part of the grander mesh, not being just one of the sections of multiplicity as being a part of the grander whole. To me, there's always things that are beyond time and beyond events. And when we tap into those things, it's like time itself becomes a flat circle we're just viewing from above. And that has this very not linear, but circular pattern, and we can tell what's going to happen. So that's why I think it's possible to look into the future and tell somebody their future. I think it's also possible to look into the past, but that's easier. But as far as affecting the future, that's a little bit different matter.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily disagree with you. More, what I was saying is with the runes and the tarot and the oracle, I can get a very clear idea of who the person is and everything that is about them. And I think of time also as cyclical or spiral. Like, so we go back to events over and over again until we learn the lesson that we need to learn about that event. So that's why I don't go too far into the future, because I think we still create things, but yes, there are cycles. So you can predict a lot of things by knowing who a person is. And when you're using a divination tool, you could really get into who the person is. So you can say, okay, well, this person is most likely going to do this domino effect, and this is most likely what they're going to choose. So in that way, you can kind of, predict the future in that way.
Yeah. I would definitely agree from our own concept of time that is definitely true. And I mean, the only place I would disagree is that I sent time as a construct. Anything we're going to do is also in a sequence of events is predictable if time can be viewed from above or beyond itself, which is incredibly hard to do. It's not something that can be easily done. But it's like if the gods look down upon us and kind of like see us in our entirety it's so
Yeah.
obvious what we're gonna do because they see us in our entirety and see through us.
Yeah. Well, when I do divination, it's not that I can't see in theory what the person's going to do. I try and guide them into their free
Yeah.
will. So I think that's more where I'm coming from with it, is not that I can't actually see what's most likely going to happen or see it from above with the grid of reality, the fabric of reality. It's just I kind of want people to take back their power as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean,
You know?
it's good to not. It's good to not. A lot of the time, you shouldn't tell people what's going to happen,
Yeah.
because that whatever's going to happen is going to happen, but it actually affects their own idea of agency. And when they start to believe that they don't have a choice, then
Exactly.
that's when a lot of people break down spiritually, and they start to reject the idea of even it being something that they should take charge of. And it's always good to take charge of your own spiritual development.
Like if I see somebody is most likely going to die or something like that, that's only came up like once or twice in readings. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, you're going to die, and it's going to be kind of soon. I'm going to like lead them back to, something that's more beneficial to the soul progression. So
Yeah,
that's
that makes sense. Destiny is complicated. It's just as complicated as realizing our ultimate forms, our self beyond this small self, the big self, if you will. Is there anything in closing that you'd like to recommend to anybody as far as reading or as far as pursuing their own destiny before we close this conversation?
As far as pursuing their own destiny, I really study quantum physics a lot and quantum mechanics. I think that you have to get in touch with who you are in order to create your destiny appropriately. And so really doing a lot of inner work, shadow work. Also, as far as books, like I like anything by, was it Eckhart Tolle, like The Power of Now, any of those books, because it helps get rid of the ego a little bit so you can get into the deeper layers of yourself. So you're
That's actually, the funny thing is we were talking about Buddhism, earlier, and the first kind of Buddhism that I was studying when I first started studying religions was Tibetan Buddhism. And I'm actually finding myself back into studying, and it's a lot like Vedanta in a lot of ways. And the gods are understood in very unique ways in Tibetan Buddhism, but everything is seen as like part of the grander whole. And getting in touch with, well, this is very vague, but getting in touch with your actual connection to it. I just like to kind of hold up a book that I started reading just for anybody's interest out there. This is, of course, and I've read other works by Rinpoche's, but The Crystal and the Way of Light. It's Sutra, Tantra, and Dzogchen. And that's a book that I started reading that really deals with a lot of that oneness, but also that level of agency that we have to take up in our lives to move forward. Anyway, thank you very much, Ashley, for joining me on this video. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, shoot them down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Destiny or anything like that. And I sincerely hope to see all of you on the channel in the future.